So our next speaker is all the way from the Philippines. When his flight was delayed, he had 30 hours without any sleep, but had a great, just a fascinating lunch with David and Pedro on Wednesday. So Father Pedro Walpole, Society of Jesus, is the Director of Research at the Institute of Environmental Science for Social Change in the Philippines, and is the coordinator of Reconciliation with Creation for the Jesuit Conference Asia Pacific. He holds a doctorate in land use change from King's College in London, and is a practitioner in sustainable environment and community land management in Southeast Asia. A contributor to the Global Ignatian Advocacy Network Ecology, Father Pedro continues to share on poverty reduction in forest lands, human security, partnerships for local development, disaster risk reduction, climate justice, and indigenous peoples' rights. The spirituality he speaks of contemplates an environment that leads to action. Our environmental way of proceeding has been the basis for engaging both institutions and individuals as they seek to find new depth to their action. Please help me welcome Father Pedro Walpole.
Good evening. Thank you, Phil, and also thank you, Michael, for the days that I have had with you. They have been very rich. First, I would just like to say that this is an incredible network of human persons and resources. You are deeply reflective and active, and I thank you for the consolation and the hope that you share. Perhaps the groaning we experience here over these days is in finding ways to relate with all of life, to more broadly network and communicate, to form new channels of hope and compassion, not just with 28 universities, not even with Congress or the corporations, but with 9 billion people. And together, consciously, and through the natural systems of feedback, find the balance of self-organization on this planet. How do we listen and accompany in healing a living earth? How do we do this with gratitude and integrity and simplicity, so that we can hand on, in the face of our own limitations and the cycle of life, to the generations coming? David Curtin has shared with us how we as humans organize around a shared story, around communities and society, and are now challenged to do so in a global world that cares. Our story is filtered from our parents, our experiences, friends, and society. It only has meaning, it only holds water, if reflected upon and tested with others. It is a lifetime. It is a life-giving story. It is sacred. Our story transforms our life and holds reflection and meaning for others. We need to know where we belong, share an identity that embraces others, cross the academic silos, political and religious boundaries, income levels and ages, and embrace a caring world. For multiple reasons, we are driven to form a collective story with different dimensions of faith and hope, solidarity and justice, mercy and compassion, that we share from home to a global world that now needs to focus on a living economy for a living earth. we must declare life again in full wonder and awe, and declare that it is good. The earth's interrelatedness is best explained, or best explains, sustainability. We're always looking for definitions, but if we look at the world we live on and its own systems, we know that it is sustainable, not the economy. And because we are always learning, always being born and dying, because we are spirit and matter, there is true development in such change. Change we must, and that is good. A little of my story is that I'm a Jesuit inspired by the people I work with. I started with community forest management, in which I met Fran and David Curtin many decades ago, and now work in areas of disaster risk reduction, because we've lost most of our forests, and in trying to build back better. We have a greater share of typhoons and inadequate infrastructure in Asia Pacific, and we know our vulnerability and our insecurity. It has taken 20 years since the Ormoc disaster to coordinate and develop a protocol of action before the typhoon strikes. But also, we experience much of the human spirit, much of the healing and mercy needed to build back better and to love life. Life becomes, in sadness and in joy, so simple, so loving. In the Jesuit Global Ignition Advocacy Network, water has become a focus. We are now moving at this stage for a dialogue of science and values in Stockholm next year, hopefully during the World Water Week. And the corporate world must also be drawn into this engagement. I left some flyers for it on the table outside. So if people want to understand more, please contact me. We seek for justice in a redistribution of resources, in the service of needs and sustainability before wants. And this is what should lie at the heart of corporate financial management. But these corporate institutions of limited liabilities and the financial structures of Brentwood design have no heart, have no life. They are, as has been said, numerical machines designed ever to accumulate without responsibility for the few absurdly rich. These institutions need to be stripped of their legal personhood, and the economy needs to be returned to the home, the echo, and the community, to society and a global world in balance. We have strived for sustainable development and free markets, but the sustainability that now grows is not that of people, but of power, and a GDP that does not reflect a distribution amongst the nation's peoples. Markets need again to be for people. The economy needs to be for people and sustaining all life. The economy cannot live without earth, the earth on which we live. There was a glimmer of hope with the millennia and the promise of Millennium Development Goals. But no, we as people did not really develop humanly. More land, more water, more resources came into corporate hands, and small farmers and small fisher people got more marginalized along with the wastelands and along with the waste. There is a subsistence that is not poverty in the world. The most sustainable are legally deprived of their integrity with the land. They are not productive enough for profitability. That's the problem. I live amongst the Pulangiun people of Mindanao, who against all odds sustain an educational program in their own language and their own domain, which has integrity in its daily living, not yet dominated by Monsanto, like every other neighboring village south of us. From this, and along with many other local communities, the busy world is reminded of the simple beauty of living and of belonging to the land. Ignatius of Loyola, in his early years of medieval chivalry, spoke of finding God in all things, from the small flower to the skies above. He carried that to the rooftops of Rome. We find it anew today in this challenge of healing earth that drives us deeper to a contemplation in action, always reflecting upon God with us, immanent and transcendent, as David reminds us. In this we are called to live out, to love out our lives on this earth. Since I have arrived in Seattle, I have learned a few fragmented things on the news and in the rooms, yet integrally they affect me. The Duwamish First Peoples live on these lands here, and with others protect the Puget Sound. I acknowledge their legacy and their life as living in this place. Over 600 people have died in Yunnan from a 6.1 Richter measurement earthquake, mainly because their houses lack adequate structure. I've learned here that to become a doctor, which I thought was humanitarian in nature, it should not cost $250,000 enslaving students and parents to debt for another quarter of their life. What has happened to education? That it binds in people to a professionalism that is forever consuming and ever blinkered in a society. Polymines in British Columbia had a tailings failure this week, or at the end of last week, the impact of which is presently immeasurable. The mercury, the arsenic, not to mention the sediments and the loss of forests. But then I learned while I was here that Canadian waterways are open season, all seasons. And the free-for-all fracking has become sheer madness. Again on this campus, it's the choice, lush and vibrant vegetation that holds this campus together, that unifies it in its beauty, uniting architecture and air quality and human spirit, and the desire of the students to transform the world. We have just heard many stories, but amongst many of the painful stories is this transoceanic canal in Nicaragua. How do we live in this world with sanity? What is it we must do with all volition? Where does the scientific, the social, and the spiritual inquiry of this university and the universal community lead us? The quality of our education in a Jesuit institution is to transform. That's what I understand is excellence, not grades. Leveraging 28 universities on climate change and their investments by catching up on SRI marketing, it's a given. Sharing educational resources by allowing students cross-learning more broadly and more deeply in ecology, economics, and culture in our universities is another obvious area. Engaging with our local communities and governance structures is another. Committing to one aspect of a chosen global dialogue is another, like Nicaragua, for example. We also need to learn in Jesuit community, as we engage with others, a deeper commitment to healing this broken world. You are transforming the Jesuit community as you live out the Jesuit mission of service and reconciling with creation. I feel Father Jim Hogg and myself have just been absorbing, taking in all the great work and the energy here. It's beyond our capacity to communicate this, but communication amongst and beyond Jesuit institutions and networks is essential. This is another challenge we face. How do we do this? Father Rodolfo Nicolas, in his letter of 2011 to the whole society, calls for a more profound respect for creation and decisive measures of protection. He asks us as Jesuits to examine our personal lives, our community lifestyles, and our institutional practices. He calls us to restore our relations, to move from written statements of concrete life and mission to a life that is concrete and a mission that is sustainable for the planet. This demands, he says of us, a change of heart that manifests our gratitude to God for the gift of creation and our readiness to embark on the path of conversion. The radical change in attitude towards the environment has not yet emerged, or the organized approach needed for the Jesuits to live out this mission. It needs all of us. Ecology as a dimension of our regular life and apostolic action still remains a dream. It is not part of our culture yet, and there is much confusion over commitment to ecology and its relation to poverty, mission, and lifestyle. This sense of the not yet and these three challenges of attitude, dimensions, and relation face us all. You give me hope that the Jesuits will act. We need this whole Jesuit family to bring about the change and to participate in the broader global community, learning and assisting, and at times leading by our service. Father Rodolfo Nicolas has asked the Jesuits for depth in their mission. You are going deep. Deep in reflection and in education, and finding a communication and an advocacy that is transformative and hope-generating. I ask you to continue this. I end with the question and the reflection. The greatest gift we have as humans is to heal. If we act without love, we are but meaningless. And so, in the spirit of justice for love and for life, have I healed today? Have I been healed? If so, I am humbly blessed, and I am embraced in the salvation of all creation. Thank you.